The Sustainable Switch: How to Grow Without Harming the Environment. What does the word sustainability mean? This is the question we asked entrepreneurs engaged in developing solutions for organic waste management, air pollution, and generating finance for climate change solutions. Anirudh Gupta has a simple answer. The word sustainability means a way of living that's more harmonious with our natural environment. You can measure it on the basis of whether it's more water efficient, waste efficient, carbon efficient, or energy efficient. He says in conversation with the Better India. Anirudh is the co-founder of Climbs, a startup that has fashioned a unique way of financing activities meant to mitigate the impact of climate change. On the other hand, Dr. Disha Ahuja, director of Hyderabad-based Ahuja Engineering Services, has much more to say on the subject. There has to be a sense of personal ownership on the idea of reduce, reuse, and recycle, and ownership that goes beyond looking for financial returns. On the subject of sustainable technology, the first question any business owner asks is, what financial return am I going to get on this? They are not measuring the environmental impact in terms of the emissions reduced and the immediate effect on our quality of life. Elsewhere too, it's somebody else's problem and in someone else's backyard. To me, if you want to have a truly sustainable society, you have to first reduce your waste, take ownership, and then reuse and recycle. To be truly sustainable, we have to take ownership and practice these things individually, and then as a society. Right now, most of us are just consumers, she adds. Ahuja Engineering Service is a family-led venture in the business of making anaerobic digesters that convert organic waste into biogas and biofertilizer slurry. Meanwhile, Shantanu Sonaikar and Irfan Pathan, co-founders of the Pune-based Pi Green Innovations, take a similar tone on the subject. They, along with Rizwan Sheikh, developed a unique device called Carbon Cutter, a filterless device that can be plugged into the exhaust of automobiles and diesel generator sets to convert the emitted particulate matter into soot. Sustainability is the responsibility to grow in a way where the environment does not pay the cost. It's imperative to put your money where your mouth is. We follow the ethos that sustainability needs to be long-term, says Shantanu. However, Irfan adds, it's high time for us to start considering and paying the cost for the environmental damage. We cannot be talking or preaching about cost effectiveness, low-cost solutions, or sustainability at cheap rates. The cost that we pay right now will be nothing compared to the eventual cost that we as a population stand to pay if we don't address this damage soon. All three ventures stated above have highlighted different facets of what they believe sustainability means. But some key themes emerge: living in harmony with nature, taking ownership, and the cost we have to pay now so that we can save future generations. Addressing these themes, all three ventures have developed unique solutions that not only abide by their concepts of sustainability, but also give us a shot at a cleaner and healthier future. Here are their stories as Indians building sustainable solutions, how they arrived at them, and their thoughts on the larger sustainability business ecosystem in the country. Part 1. How not to choke on particulate matter. Rizwan Sheikh from Maharashtra's Bhusawal town was running an air conditioning repair shop when he realized that filters were running on old technology. The manual cleaning of filters choked with dust was cumbersome, and replacing filters every few months was a hassle. Over time, he did some research and invented a filterless technology called the Carbon Cutter. which converts particulate matter into residue that can be removed from the device. The first iteration of the carbon cutter was shaped like a wooden television set. Rizwan had a scooter to which he had attached the product and had collected some soot particles. He showed me a video when I met him at a small startup forum in Pune in 2016. Recalls Irfan, who had a coffee startup at the time and was there for other reasons. Right from the start, Irfan believed this could be made into something bigger. I saw commercial and sustainable value in this innovation. I liked the idea that we could do something for existing assets in the country like trucks, buses or gensets. He explains. Irfan and Rizwan met after 15 days and sat down for a meeting. We did not have paper to write down our ideas, so the first business plan came up on a tissue paper. We concluded that we would need 17 to 18 lakh rupees to make this work, says Irfan, who had fallen in love with the idea and decided to invest. At the same time, Shantanu, who is a chartered accountant, and I were also trying to raise funds for my cold coffee business. That is when everyone came together and we started Pi Green Innovations instead, he adds. Pi Green Tech Solutions, a partnership company, was started in 2016 and that later turned into Pi Green Innovations, a private limited company in 2019. Shantanu, meanwhile, joined Irfan and Rizwan towards the end of 2016 when the innovation was taking shape. By this time, it was not just an idea, but a pilot-ready prototype. Once there was proof in the pudding, with initial test results showing over 80% efficiency in capturing particulate matter and reducing toxic emissions, that's when we decided we need to back this innovation further. It couldn't just be a part-time initiative or a passion project. This needed to take the shape of a product and then eventually into a business, Shantanu recalls. Developing the technology. Pi Green Innovation started as an endeavor to capture emissions at source. How does one do that? One of the fundamentals of Pi Green is that they weren't just trying to solve the problem of pollution. They were also trying to solve the problem with existing solutions. At the time, there were some traditional solutions like filters, water scrubbers, etc. These solutions have their limitations. There are issues like maintenance, reduction in efficiency over a long period of time, and disposal of waste. Using a wet scrubber also entails a lot of water usage to arrest air pollution. With this in mind, product development at Pi Green started in 2016, and they had a product in hand by 2018. What does the product do? Carbon cutter is a device that can be plugged into the exhaust of automobiles and diesel generator sets to collect and convert the particulate matter they emit into soot. This soot is then used to make ink, paint, and other useful items. By capturing the particulate matter, the carbon cutter reduces toxic emissions into the air by over 90%. Interestingly, however, none of the three co-founders were engineers. None of us are engineers, but Rizwan has a BSc in physics and used to run an AC repair shop. He is a very hands-on innovator who understands electronics and physics quite well. After all, the entire principle of the electrostatic precipitator, or ESP, which forms the technological basis of the carbon cutter, requires an understanding of electronics and physics, recalls Irfan. According to the definition put forward by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, an electrostatic precipitator, or ESP, removes particles from a gas stream by using electrical energy to charge particles either positively or negatively. The charged particles are then attracted to collector plates carrying the opposite charge. At the time, if you read any published academic papers on ESP, They would say that it cannot be used to tackle particulate matter generated by vehicles running on diesel. In none of these papers would you find ESP technology to capture particulate matter or PM 2.5 or PM 10. Today we have a design patent for it. Although we did hire senior subject matter experts with years of industry and academic experience to assist us in this process, says Irfan. The excess amount of particulate matter suspended in the air, particularly in major Indian cities, has been well documented. According to a global report published by US-based Health Effects Institute, Delhi and Kolkata were ranked first and second in the list of top 10 most polluted cities where PM 2.5 levels were compared. This is worrying because PM 2.5 can enter your lungs or even into your blood, causing a variety of serious health complications. Starting out, Pi Green engaged in a lot of research and development. They developed 77 prototypes of the carbon cutter before arriving at their final product. After a year and a half of continuous improvements, they finally had one prototype which was tested on a vehicle first and then with Automotive Research Association of India. They got some substantial results of more than 80% reduction. But then it took another year to take the carbon cutter to the market. Commercializing the carbon cutter. Pi Green started commercial production in October 2020 and completed their first sale in January 2021. Instead of vehicles, however, they first retrofitted the carbon cutter in diesel gensets. This development was in some ways a function of an order passed by the National Green Tribunal in 2019 for mandating retrofits on all diesel gensets in India. So, as of now, diesel gensets across India are mandated to install retrofits to reduce particulate matter emissions by at least 70%. Pi Green is a certified player in this space in India. So who are their customers? We have some big brands. I may not be able to name them for legal purposes, but our customers are of two kinds. One is a direct customer. These include the largest industrial names in India: hotels, commercial spaces, industrial parks, warehouses, and ports. We have about 250 to 300 installations across the country. Geographically, our customers are spread across South and North India. They contribute to about 90% of our revenues, says Shantanu. We have some customers in the West and are looking at opportunities in the East as well. There are some global MNCs on our roster too. These include major Japanese conglomerates, German and French companies. These are our direct customers, he adds. Recently, Pi Green has also tied up with OEMs, including major players, who manufacture diesel gensets. They've tied up with Cummins India Limited, Caterpillar India, and Sudhir Power. These are three of the biggest names in the diesel genset space. These partnerships represent an approval of the technology that we have developed because all these companies traditionally have their own solutions. But given the technological advantage that we have, they've tied up with us for pan-India business, claims Shantanu. Despite these achievements, commercializing the carbon cutter wasn't an easy process. As Shantanu notes, if you are a startup, you encounter challenges. Within that space, if you are an environment startup, these challenges just double and quadruple. One of the basic challenges for any environment company in India is awareness, whether it's of air pollution, drawbacks associated with it, sources and components, etc. India also falls short in terms of infrastructure to tackle air pollution and spread awareness around the subject. Addressing concerns on pricing and costing was a major challenge for us. Convincing customers of our pricing, although we are expensive, is a challenge. So is convincing customers to outlay budgets for something that does not add to their revenue or profit, Irfan says. The second challenge is convincing businesses of the value of our technology. In our initial days, Irfan and I have faced situations where we were literally asked to leave meetings or offices of some highly placed people who were not convinced about the technology and its efficiency. At the basic level, you have to convince people that something like this can happen. And then obviously, there's always the challenge of availability of funds for innovation, explains Shantanu. Moving forward, however, both Irfan and Shantanu believe that there needs to be greater regulation, implementation, and enforcement by the government. Fortunately, in India, we have seen a considerable increase in involvement and engagement from the government, its various bodies, especially the National Green Tribunal and the state pollution control boards. That's helping us counter the present challenges. He adds, manufacturing the carbon cutter and measuring impact. Pi Green has a manufacturing facility in Chakan, an industrial corridor in the western suburbs of Pune. Thus far, they have sold and commissioned more than 250 machines from various nodes of 125 kilovolt amperes to 2500 kVA. Initially, though, their manufacturing unit was at a 4,000 square feet plant in Moshi, a prominent residential-cum-industrial locality along the Nashik-Pune highway. Their first batch of 75 machines were made there, but it was a very cramped place. Shantanu shares, saying, people living in the vicinity of our manufacturing unit were also terrified of us because we started storing our products outside our premises. Fortunately, at the time, we raised our second round of funding, which was $4.5 million from Opus Consulting. That is when we shifted to a bigger space. Today, we have a 50,000 square feet plant that can manufacture approximately 200 to 250 machines per month. On the subject of measuring the impact of the carbon cutter, Shantanu claims, it's very tough to quantify the impact of her technology as such, but we can proudly say that 250 diesel gensets are non-polluting and not emitting the kind of hazardous emissions that they were once emitting. We have retrofitted diesel gensets with a capacity of about 150 megawatts. In terms of the volume of air we have cleaned, it's about 100 billion liters. Our devices have stopped about 200 to 300 kilograms of soot carbon from entering or getting suspended into the air. But what happens to the soot carbon that is left behind? Once it is collected, it can be used for manufacturing ink, paints, polymers, rubber, etc. We have now ensured that this soot isn't dumped into rivers, lakes, or even landfill for that matter. This soot certainly has an alternative use once there is enough to commercialize. As of today, whatever soot is collected is sent to our research and development unit to study its properties. They have developed a polymer using it. The soot can also be used in the manufacturing of tiles or concrete for roads, claims Shantanu. From customers who bought the devices directly from Pi Green, we collect the remaining soot ourselves. Although the quantities collected are not large enough for us to commercialize, we test it. We have found that the soot contains almost 97% carbon, claims Irfan. Nonetheless, air pollution has various components. Pi Green has a full-fledged R&D department that is also looking to address other pollutants, carbon dioxide capture, and other greenhouse gases. Using their carbon-cutting technology, they have spoken extensively about and engaged in other applications as well. The base technology is the carbon cutter. So the carbon cutter for diesel gensets is a product that is currently commercial. But we have also started commercializing the carbon cutter for industrial boilers. We've also developed a pilot employing our carbon cutter for heavy vehicles, which contribute about 25% to particulate matter emissions in India. We have developed and tested it for over 70% efficiency, says Irfan. Every engine or vehicle manufactured in India is certified by ARAI or ICAT for efficacy, efficiency, and durability. Since the order issued by the National Green Tribunal that 70% of the pollution of diesel gensets has to be stopped, there was a certification policy written for retrofit emission control devices or RECDs for diesel gensets too. The policy document came out in February 2022, and now there is a rigorous test of 100 hours that must be done at the ARAI. Understanding the sustainability ecosystem in India. In 2017-18, the government established the National Clean Air Program. It came to the conclusion that diesel gensets contribute to 17% of air pollution, and this should be reduced by 70% by 2025. The certification policy for RECDs came after this decision. Many pollution control boards adopted the policy post that. What we see from 2019 till date is that industries are now budgeting retrofit devices in their annual budgets. Some of the bigger companies have also come to us, asking for different solutions for boilers or incinerators. So awareness amongst the various industries has increased to a greater extent, explains Shantanu. But all of these developments, Irfan argues, have been driven by government policy. The business climate is such that if we present a product to an industry that we can install for 5 or 7 lakh rupees, the first question any user will ask is whether there is any ROI. But once there is a push from the government that if you don't have an RECD or a retrofit device, then you are not allowed to use your genset. Only then will people start implementing solutions like ours. So the government is playing a very crucial role, he notes. There are, however, some key improvements they would like to see in this ecosystem. As Shantanu notes, there has to be greater enforcement of policy from the government. Enforcement is a function of time, and in a big country like India, it is also a function of distance. Nonetheless, Shantanu believes that startups must engage the government on issues pertaining to regulation. They shouldn't merely engage with the customer. We have held a plethora of discussions with some senior members in the pollution control boards or in environment ministries about various issues of pollution and the solutions we have. We've been actively doing this for a while, he notes. Startup ecosystem for sustainability ventures. Shantanu believes Spy Green's success is a result of what each co-founder brings to the table. Rizwan is a nerd, innovator and inventor. Irfan is a hardcore businessman and technologist who was also the first person to invest in Rizwan's technology. He can't be intuitive and passionate for a very long time. It also has to make business sense. Meanwhile, I am a chartered accountant. Beyond a point, I'll start looking at the numbers and the economics of it. Once we established this venture, however, we had the good sense of hiring many bright and intelligent subject matter experts to further this initiative, he says. Having said that, a startup like Pi Green also depends on the business ecosystem it exists in. Fortunately, Shantanu believes that this ecosystem is on the up. It's an exciting time to be a clean tech startup in India. There's a lot of innovation, including innovation in monitoring air quality, which India desperately needs, he says. Irfan adds, holding an IP or a patent around your innovation is something that will intrigue the various stakeholders, be it governments, investors, or even customers. That is something we have seen in the last 3 years. There is an appreciation for technology and IP in what you're trying to provide as a solution, says Irfan. What's particularly remarkable about Pi Green's rise is that unlike many startups today, they did not go through an incubation center despite many invitations. What they did have was access to investors who were willing to remain patient as they developed the carbon cutter. Fortunately, our first investor, Mr. Harshal Morde, was not very tough to convince. In our second round, it took more effort to convince investors because there is a point when people stop looking at you as a startup. They start looking at you as a business. When that transition happens, all talk about technology and patents vanishes. People want to see numbers and business models. The focus is on getting the job done, getting business and achieving your numbers, says Shantanu. Irfan ends the discussion on a hopeful note saying, "Our investors have been very patient. They've accepted that innovation takes time. They understand innovation, for the environment certainly needs more patience and money. They've backed us all the way. Fortunately, we have been able to achieve a sustainable business model. We are breaking even now as a business and are self-sustainable." Part 2. Nothing goes to waste. When electrical engineer Shruti Ahuja left her cushy job in the United States and came back to India, little did she know that one day her work could be a game changer in the waste management industry. In 2010, she returned to Hyderabad with an aim to explore different entrepreneurial avenues. One among a couple of business ideas in her mind was to make organic waste valuable. In 2012, Shruti founded Ahuja Engineering Services, a company that has prevented over thousands of tons of organic waste from entering landfills. Now, a decade later, the engineering graduate from the University at Buffalo, New York, has established 28 plants with anaerobic digesters that convert organic waste into biogas and biofertilizer slurry, which is sold as fertilizer. Up until 2019, we were basically working in skid-mounted, prefabricated small and mid-sized plants. In 2020, we commissioned our Bhavanpalli vegetable market yard plant in Hyderabad, which is the largest one that we have set up to date. It has a 10 tons per day processing capacity for vegetable market waste, explains Dr. Disha Ahuja, a PhD in chemical engineering, Shruti's sister and director at Ahuja Engineering Services. So the model is a captive consumption of energy that is being produced from the waste. They also save money on transport logistics, which would otherwise be spent on sending the waste to Jawahar Nagar landfill. In addition to the waste disposal costs, they are saving on the electricity cost and the LPG requirement in the kitchen, which lies next to the biogas plant. She adds, Ahuja Engineering has been successfully operating the Bhavanpalli market plant for more than 3 years now. This plant was funded by the Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India. Land allocation, civil work preparation and operation and maintenance expenses were funded by the Department of Agricultural Marketing, Government of Telangana. The grant was given to CSIR, Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, or IICT. Ahuja Engineering Services, meanwhile, executed the design, installation, commissioning, fabrication, and operational maintenance. A key partner in this project was Dr. A. Gangagni Rao at CSIR IICT. All their biogas plants are set up in partnership with IICT. Based on the success of this plant, which was mentioned by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in a Mann Ki Baat episode, CSIR IICT received additional funding and selected Ahuja Engineering Services as their partner to set up 3 more 500 kg per day plants in 3 Raitu Bazaars or farmers markets, Erragadda, Kukatpalli and Batasingaram in Hyderabad. A fourth plant under the same model is currently being set up at 5 tons per day capacity at Gudi Malkapur market, where the biogas will be utilized to generate electricity for captive usage back in the market. All these markets have canteens running for the market employees, and we are able to utilize the biogas to replace their LPG or eliminate fossil fuel usage, claims Dr. Ahuja. Besides these locations, Ahuja Engineering has set up 2 more plants in difficult terrains in states like Himachal Pradesh and Sikkim. There is really no limitation to where we can set up plants because we have optimized the design, made them modular and skid mounted. We can put them on a trailer or a truck and send them wherever there is road transport available. In Himachal and Sikkim, we have set up plants in 2 urban local bodies. Also, across different Akshay Patra kitchens, we have already set 12 plants to date, she adds. Akshay Patra is a Bengaluru-based non-profit serving midday meals for underprivileged children. The company has targeted different customer segments like universities, the Indian Railways, IT companies and hospitals and helped them deal with organic waste with their technology. Ahuja Engineering has also set up 1 plant for the South Central Railways in Vijayawada and another for the Bhadrachalam Temple in Telangana under the aegis of the Water, Sanitation and Hygiene Institute and ITC. Our solution is simple. You already have bulk waste generated, collected and segregated naturally when it's coming straight from a kitchen. It's prudent to set up a plant right there, treat your waste on site and use the energy back in the kitchen. You eliminate the logistics of waste transportation collection and prevent methane emissions generated at landfill sites because you are utilizing the waste and converting it into methane, which is used to replace your fossil fuel. That is the core idea, explains Dr. Ahuja. At the poultry farm. Back when she was exploring business ideas, Shruti accompanied her father Davinder Ahuja, an electrical engineer from BITS Pilani, to visit a poultry farm. There, she learnt about the massive problem of poultry waste. On research, I found that India generates approximately 23 million tons of poultry waste per year, recalls Shruti. Nitrogen and phosphorus present in poultry excreta can pollute water and the ammonia emitted can lead to infections. Dr. Disha notes, talking to our network, we understood that they didn't know what to do with the waste. It posed a real health issue to poultry birds, besides the fact that there was no easy way to dispose of it. So villagers in neighboring areas complained about the smell, it would contaminate the water table and so on. That interaction with poultry farmers was a turning point. She started researching on technologies that convert biodegradable waste like poultry litter into biogas, and in 2012 came in contact with Dr. A. Gangagni Rao, Chief Scientist at CSIR IICT. Shruti then collaborated with the IICT Bioengineering and Environmental Sciences or BEES division and worked on an organic waste anaerobic gas lift reactor. In the same year, Shruti's company got the license for the biomethanation technology. Using the experience she earned, she built an anaerobic digester. With her savings and contributions from her parents, she set up the digester in their farm on the outskirts of Hyderabad. For the next couple of months, Shruti and her team fed different kinds of biodegradable wastes like food, animal excreta and leftover vegetables from the wholesale market into the digester. We conducted numerous trials on the digester and every failure was one step towards improvement. After a point, I was confident to bring the technology in the market and sell it commercially, says Shruti. Our business does not hinge on making money on operation and maintenance and selling a high-maintenance plant, whose parts are difficult to procure. Our business model is to do the initial sale of the plant, and then it should be trouble-free and running by itself. Customers can train their existing staff to run the plant. Even if the plant requires replacement parts, they should be easy to obtain from the market, or we have them in stock. Those technical hurdles have been eliminated, says Dr. Disha. Developing technology, commercializing it. There are challenges both on the technical side with respect to regulations and getting the customer to accept this technology and set it up. The technology was new when we started 13 years back. There were no players, but there was a need in the market. Our business got a fillip when the Union government issued the Solid Waste Management 2016 rules, which said that anybody generating more than 100 kg per day has to treat the waste on site, or they can give it to the municipality at a charge. Although the enforcement of such regulations varies depending on the state or city and remains slow today, we are optimistic that it will pick up soon, notes Dr. Disha. Ahuja Engineering Services largely caters to urban locations, which predominantly have bulk waste generators, massive fossil fuel users, and landfills. For urban locations, we provide a plant that looks good, does not require too much space, is maintenance-free, has no smell, and is environmentally compliant. We are basically getting biogas and a biofertilizer slurry as the output. Also, it's a completely closed process. Once the waste goes in, there is nothing coming out. The biogas is burnt in the kitchen, there is no odor. We do leak testing and other factory tests of the equipment to ensure safety, explains Dr. Disha. Currently, they are working on large-scale plants. We have built plants that have a 10 tons per day processing capacity for organic waste. But there is a market need to go higher so that you can further purify the gas and make CBG, that is compressed biogas, she adds. CBG has applications in vehicles or in the form of PNG pipeline for cooking. That requires much larger plants and the design has to be customized for the location. Is commercialization driven by government policy? Government policy in the CBG industry is seeing some improvements, claims Dr. Disha. In 2018, the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, in association with public sector undertaking oil marketing companies, announced the launch of its SATAT, or Sustainable Alternative Towards Affordable Transportation scheme. The initiative is aimed at setting up of compressed biogas production plants and making them available in the market for use in automotive fuels. What the policy said is that an entrepreneur has to set up the plant, but the oil PSUs will offtake the CBG. In other words, they will be the buyers of the CBG. Their goal was to set up around 5,000 plants by 2023, but the offtake has been slow. Recently, however, there has been a lot of traction and the number of inquiries has gone up, explains Dr. Disha. She claims that one pharma company has approached them. Companies dealing in potatoes are also approaching them. After all, they have a lot of potato starch in waste. There are also companies exporting frozen foods that generate a lot of waste in meeting quality standards. As a result, they also have rejects. Such industries are also coming forward as they have understood that not only does this save them cost, but also helps them cater to customers who want to source from companies following sustainable practices. If requisite regulation is enforced properly, we can do wonders as a company. Even now, it takes us a long time to convince a customer, even when they are interested and approach us first. Organically, as awareness is going up and regulation is being enforced, people are coming up to us. STPs and ETPs have to be set up while a building is getting constructed. That is the kind of regulation we need for biogas plants. You are managing your sewage waste and water waste, but you also have to manage your organic solid waste. All these things should be mandatory when issuing a building permit, says Dr. Disha. What potential lies ahead? They have two products, biogas and biofertilizer slurry. The latter has now been notified in their fertilizer control order. In other words, their biofertilizer slurry can now be sold as a fertilizer, which was not the case earlier. Meanwhile, in the recent budget, the PM Pradhan scheme was launched for promotion of alternate nutrient like biofertilizer in agriculture. The fertilizer companies also have been asked to use a percentage of the biofertilizer from biogas plants. The Satat scheme has also revised their price. So overall, there have been a lot of positive developments, says Dr. Disha. Sustainability ventures need more funding. After quitting her job in the United States and coming back to India in 2017, Dr. Disha joined a women's startup program at the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, to gauge a better understanding of the startup ecosystem in India. She went through a one-year program with 100 other entrepreneurs. Following a stint there, she joined a Women in Energy program organized by the Shell Foundation, where she was one among 10 entrepreneurs. These programs help you get started, give you mentorship, and help you establish networks. But there is very little seed funding that they provide to entrepreneurs. Suffice to say, I'm still an active part of these networks. Fortunately for us, my father had a turnkey electrical business which he started 35 years ago. Therefore, we already had some infrastructure in terms of factory premises and skilled staff, explains Dr. Disha. We then invested some of our money into the business. But if I had to start from scratch, it would be very difficult to be where we are today. The ecosystem is evolving, but it's still challenging for the kind of technology-oriented business like ours. Things, however, look promising now with more state support and market traction for our solutions, she adds. Part 3. Just 30 seconds for the battle against climate change. Every time you step out of your house, you generate carbon footprints, whether you are heading to the office or visiting the local grocery store. But what if you could find out what this amount is and pay for it in a way that indirectly helps increase forest cover? Launched by Anirudh Gupta and Siddhant Jairam in November 2021, Climbs partners with companies like Zingbus, Make My Trip, and Tamarind Chutney. Every time a customer avails a service from these sites, they are given an option to neutralize their journey by paying a small extra amount, by which they receive climbs. One climb is equal to 1 kg of carbon neutralized, says co-founder Anirudh Gupta. Anirudh's interest in environmental sustainability goes way back to when he was in boarding school. He attended the Doon School from class 7 till he graduated high school. Interestingly, the school formerly housed the campus for the Forest Research Institute. Every semester for 5 days, we would go mountaineering, stay in the wild, and figure out things on our own. That awe and respect for nature developed early on in my life, to the point that when I went to college for undergraduate studies at the University of California, Berkeley, I wanted to build awesome stuff that serves Earth, he says. While that feeling was deeply ingrained in him, he parallelly had a deep love for aviation because his father served in the Indian Air Force as a fighter pilot. Eventually, my love for aviation and planes took over. I started interning with leading aircraft manufacturer Airbus and worked with them till 2020. But it's in those 3.5 years when some of the most interesting insights in sustainability came to me. I started developing a greater interest in becoming a more sustainable consumer, he recalls. There were a series of unanswered questions in his mind. Is there a more sustainable way to live in terms of energy, waste and water? In 2016-17, I got a 10 kilowatt solar plant installed in my house in Delhi. At the time, solar energy was just about taking off in the city, he says. Interestingly, right after the solar plant went live, his neighbors started texting him with questions. Who put it up? How much did it cost? What are you doing to maintain it? For each question, his answers were simple. I told them about the cost and how I should break even in 4.5 to 5 years. Moreover, I do nothing to maintain it, and that the vendor takes care of that. This is typically how any behavior gets created. If we can convince someone to do something that's obviously required, it has to be easily accessible, economically viable, and fun to do, he recalls. Within a month, all 6 of his neighbors went solar. It was a wow moment for me. Those solutions were already out there in the market, but it was just a question of adoption, which led to a ripple effect. The same thing happened when I installed a rainwater harvesting system for my house. Looking at the ease of access, economic viability, and the fact that it was simple and fun to use, all 6 of my neighbors also installed a rainwater harvesting system in their homes. The same thing happened with composting and getting my e-waste recycled, he adds. This insight stayed with him. Sustainable living could become a default choice and actually be the normal way to live. You just need somebody to guide you into it. There are really cool entrepreneurs working on making those solutions better. The problem is last mile adoption by individual consumers like you and me and by enterprises. This problem caught my interest. Last mile consumer adoption has to be done in a way that is seamless. People won't go out of their way to adopt a new solution unless it's pre-packaged in a certain way. That behavior change is something I'm excited about, he adds. Going into 2020 with that insight, Anirudh realized that despite his passion for aircrafts, he needed to spend all his time and energy working on the single biggest problem of our times, that is, climate change. I wasn't sure where I would begin, but behavior change at scale is what needs to be done. So I quit my job and decided to spend the next 10 years dedicated to solving the problem of climate change. He recalls. Developing climbs. In June 2021, Anirudh, along with Siddhant Jairam, his co-founder, came together to establish Climbs. Siddhant and I met online in a climate school called Terra.do. After talking for a year, we realized there are phenomenal climate solutions all around us in India. They need finances to scale. The finance problem was fascinating, he recalls. Can we just keep waiting for markets to mature and then depend on governments to find a way? Climate change is a ticking time bomb. This has an end date. We only have the next 5 to 6 years or so to find a solution for carbon dioxide emissions. That doesn't even cover the other environmental issues like water, waste, air pollution, etc. He adds. So, how do you finance nature-based carbon removal solutions at scale? That question became the nugget for Climbs to solve. And if they did it, where would they go and find new money? The new money would come from individual customers like you and I, consumer brands, enterprises, financial institutions, and then governments, in that order, says Anirudh. Anirudh and Siddhant figured that about $6 trillion a year need to go towards carbon removal solutions at scale for them to have a shot at a cleaner, safer, fairer, and better future. But they started small and unlocked the first pool of that money from consumers. In June 2021, we decided to unlock the first type of capital from consumers by highlighting that everything we consume has a carbon footprint. From our food to flights, fashion or personal care products, and even the online events we go to, he recalls. This started with an online event, Anirudh Shares. The event took place in October 2021. We planned to calculate the carbon footprint of the event and then show people their footprint for being there. While there was a free ticket, we also issued a carbon neutral ticket to see which one people chose, he adds. How do you calculate the carbon footprint for an online event? There is a carbon footprint that is generated from network data transfers. It includes how much time people spend organizing the event online, how many people are coming to the website pre-event, and even being on a website creates a carbon footprint, albeit very minor. All this gets added up per capita. The carbon neutral ticket said that attending this online event is equivalent to emitting 5 kilograms of carbon. Project Climb said that every kilogram of carbon can be 1 climb credit, and then each climb credit would cost 1 rupee. To neutralize 5 kilograms of carbon, you can buy 5 climbs for 5 rupees. Out of the 1,000 people attending the event, how many people do you think pulled out their credit card and bought a 5 rupee decarbonized ticket? Asks Anirudh. In total, about 196 attendees paid 5 rupees for a decarbonized ticket, which is still a significant amount. What this event showed Anirudh and Siddhant was that people often didn't even know they were generating a carbon footprint by attending an online event. But if you show it in a transparent way, and then you give people the option to do something about it, give them a credit collection that they can then use to decide which nature-based carbon removal projects they want to support, they'll happily do it. That gave us so much validation that by November 2021, we decided that we can definitely apply this on any type of consumption: flights, foods, fashion, personal care, etc. So we turned the Climbs project into a company in November 2021, incorporated as a Delaware C Corp with a fully owned Indian subsidiary. In the meantime, we also raised capital, he recalls. Raising capital. In December 2021, the startup went into their first round of raising capital. In July 2022, Climbs announced that it had raised $1.2 million in funding led by Sequoia Capital India, Kalari Capital, Rain Matter, and Avana Capital. After creating this credit instrument, we decided to just sell carbon credit in the form of Climbs credit directly. The reason is very psychological. In a market where nobody knows what carbon credits are, or even carbon for that matter, you have to create mindshare and relatability. So instead of confusing you with here's a renewable energy credit, I'll give you one standard instrument that you now already know is 1 kilogram. It's like buying a ticket to a theme park, explains Anirudh. At first, you buy the ticket to the theme park, then you go in and decide which ride you want to go on later. And in that time, you've actually got far more ability and intent to be educated about what your options are. That is such a wonderful psychological tool, he adds. Getting brands to contribute. Our job is figuring out where to make these climbs available, anywhere consumption is present. Then, on the supply side, we onboard the highest quality projects so that people can choose. We then enable last mile transparency to the rupee and kilogram level on a monitorable basis. We partnered with Make My Trip for flights, Zing Bus for bus rides, and then more such partners, explains Anirudh. Today they have 25 consumer brands and more than 10 enterprises who work with them. More than 107,000 people have bought or been rewarded with at least one Climb instrument. Customers are able to see their carbon footprint and collect climbs at the checkout when adding products to their cart. Earlier, the customer would pay for additional climbs. Now, brands are rewarding them back, saying, "Do you want to make this a carbon neutral order? It's on us." Once you make the purchase, you visit the Climb's website or app and vote on which of these projects you want to put your Climb's credits into. To make your choice, you can get to know the story behind a particular project, how it works, its impact so far, and updates. They also have a geospatial partner to track the project health so that everybody who's put Climb's credits into it knows the current status. Take our fashion partner Tamarind Chutney. On their cart, when you add a product, it says, "Make your order carbon neutral, it's on us." If you click on this option, Tamarind Chutney are the ones buying the credit and then just rewarding you as a user. Even in this situation, the consumer gets to choose which project they want to invest their Climb's credit in. Here, the brand pays and customer votes for a given project, explains Anirudh. Once you have exercised your choice for a given project, you can cumulatively see what impact you have created. It's just a 30-second interaction, and this feels good. But you have democratized the brand's climate action agenda. And the last mile transparency enabled by us. He adds, impact of Climbs. Cumulatively, Climbs has financed 1,800 tons or 1.8 million kilograms worth of carbon removal already, claims Anirudh. On their supply side, they have 7 green projects, but far more are waiting to come online once they can demonstrate scalability. Today, we are among the fastest climate financing engines because we find the capital, unlock it, and turn it into the Climb's instrument. How does this work? If a climb is marked into a particular project for payout, we pay that budget out. The speed of financing has gone up exponentially. This capital that goes is literally like grant capital. We don't take an economic return on it. It's going into the hands of a tree planter or a regenerative agriculture farm, he says. It's coming from people who are either paying for it or are getting it gifted by the brand they are buying from. We also work with enterprises like Hero MotoCorp and Airbus, who are buying Climb credit and distributing it to their stakeholders at their events. One of our major products is carbon neutral events. We partner with companies during their events and calculate the carbon footprint of the event. The companies then give their attendees a chance to buy Climbs for their ticket, adds Anirudh. There are multiple ways to distribute the same Climb credit, but what it really does is provides people with a single easiest touch point. Remember, this endeavor began with Anirudh's fascination for behavior change and how it influenced him. We talked about the feeling that something has to be obviously required to address climate change, but it must be easily accessible, economically viable, and fun to do. I think for climate change and sustainable solutions, that's very true. If we keep trying to guilt trip people into saying, "Why aren't you doing your part?" and being a climate warrior, they won't know where to start. Their first big choice can't be to buy an electric car. It's too big a decision to make. So how do we simplify it? The simple solution is actually a Climb in this case, says Anirudh. Ensuring transparency. How does Climes ensure that these initiatives that customers and brands are paying for are actually working on the ground? This is where the ventures measurement, report and verification practice comes in. We don't just take the money and then give you a choice. Our job is to make sure that the money being generated is being used for the right purpose and that it's traceable. To ensure traceability, we have two systems right now. The first is on the ground reporting. That has to happen every single month. So we have an independent auditor who visits the project developer and has to report to us what has been done so far, what's the impact, etc. Those with no impact are at the risk of getting delisted from our platform, explains Anirudh. Nobody wants that because getting delisted means you are not unlocking this client's grant capital anymore. The incentive over here for the project developer is to keep getting paid for more future work, keep getting updates, and use it well. We also have a geospatial partner that monitors all our projects, and this is updated on the platform every single month. Projects earmarked for Climes are actually geofenced for anybody and not just a person who has put a climb into it. Anybody can go in anytime and study the project on the platform. We have already deplatformed one project for not complying. He adds, in the midst of all this work, how does Climes generate revenue? Anirudh describes the platform hosted by Climes as a climate finance highway. In other words, we find money where it is and enable it to flow where it needs to be. So it's almost like a utility. To be that market maker to move money, we have a take rate. In every Climb instrument, we have a built-in take rate. It's a variable take rate depending on which project is financed with that particular Climb, depending on your choice, he explains. Startup ecosystem, great expectations and recommendations. I think the climate tech and sustainability ecosystem is booming right now in India. It's the single best time to be a founder, operator, and finally an investor. India is going to be the hub for climate solutions for the world. There is lots of creativity in the space of climate tech and sustainability. How is this happening? There's a whole generation of people who actually live, breathe, and believe that climate change is solvable and they have to play their part. They don't want to sit on the sidelines, says Anirudh. With the sheer volume of curious, creative, and talented people putting their time and energy into it, and the fact that we witnessed a startup ecosystem creation in the last 7-8 years, you have a promising situation. Of course, the Indian government is talking in the right direction around climate. They've made it a very fundamental goal. Those are the core large pieces, and I think because of that, it's the single best time to be an operator in the climate tech and sustainability space, he adds. But there are also improvements he would like to see in the ecosystem. There's a lot of talk around grant capital. It actually doesn't move that fast, although I'm not sure why. I feel a healthy ecosystem like this needs a lot of grant capital and not just venture capital. That's a gap that needs to be fixed. If fixed, things will grow exponentially further. You need for-profit climate ventures and non-profit foundations also that are building communities. Those non-profits largely get financed through grants, says Anirudh. If you enable mass-scale demand for solutions, a lot gets solved. Innovators and entrepreneurs need a landscape where consumers and enterprises can easily access sustainable solutions. In the last few years, India's sustainability ecosystem has matured a lot. Today, it's becoming more mainstream that people at a household level are actually aware. Far more capital is going into climate tech than ever before. The data is undeniable. Earlier, it was just climate tech venture funds, but today you have traditional venture capital funds entering the space. We are growing, but still less than 1% of the way there, says Anirudh. By 2030, we should aim to have 100 climate unicorns out of India, because that will mean that they have managed to actually get demand traction for their solutions, he adds. Part 4. Lessons learned. Climate change is not limited to any one sector. Although the world is just waking up to the urgency of this need, solutions and innovations have come up in different sectors, from travel, energy, automobiles to food. Ventures documented in this chapter have come up with their own set of exciting solutions, including one for the seamless and rapid flow of finance into them. Listening to their stories, it's clear that they are still very early in their journey, and looking ahead, they are bound to create more impact. Along the way, however, we have learned some salient lessons. There is still an urgent need for more funds to flow into solutions that promote sustainability. Entrepreneurs also need better support from the local business ecosystem and the government, but they need to find smarter ways to scale adoption of their technology without these entities. Having said that, the overall belief seems to be that things are only going to get better for them. Igniting Ideas for Impact is an audiobook published by the Better India in association with Accenture India. Find out more about Accenture India's initiatives at www.accenture.com/in-en. Author Rinchen Norbu Wangchuk. Edited by Divya Setu and Tanya Singh.